Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating explorations ever written about how the human mind truly grows, The Developing Mind by Dr. Daniel Siegel. This isn't just another psychology book filled with theories and clinical terms. It's a revelation, a roadmap that explains how your brain, your emotions, and your relationships come together to sculpt the person you are today and the person you can still become. You see, most people think growth stops after childhood. They assume that by adulthood, the brain is fixed, personality is set, and change is nearly impossible. But neuroscience says otherwise. According to Siegel, your mind is not a static system. It's alive. It's dynamic. It's constantly changing, molded by every thought you think, every emotion you feel, and every relationship you experience. That's what makes this book so powerful. It connects the dots between three forces that define your existence: your mind, your brain, and your relationships. These three don't work separately. They dance together, influencing one another every single day. Let's start with a simple but profound question. What exactly is the mind? Is it the same thing as the brain? Is it just electrical signals firing between neurons? Or is there something deeper, something invisible that connects your inner world with the outer one? Dr. Siegel answers this with a groundbreaking concept known as interpersonal neurobiology, or IPNB. It's a big phrase, but the meaning is elegant. Your mind is created at the intersection of your biology and your relationships. Think about that. Your brain gives you the structure. Your relationships give you the rhythm. Together, they shape the flow of energy and information that we call the mind. When you were a baby, your brain wasn't just growing in size. It was wiring itself based on how your caregivers interacted with you. If your parents were warm, loving, and emotionally present, your brain learned safety, calmness, and trust. If they were cold, absent, or unpredictable, your brain learned fear, anxiety, and self-protection. Every glance, every tone, every touch left an imprint, carving patterns into your neural networks that would one day guide how you think, feel, and relate to others. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. Modern brain scans have revealed that emotional experiences shape neural circuits in real time. For example, when a mother comforts a crying baby, both of their brains release oxytocin, the bonding chemical. This single act of connection builds trust, regulates emotion, and strengthens the areas of the child's brain responsible for empathy and self-control. But if a baby is left alone to cry, ignored or unseen, something else happens. The brain floods with cortisol, the stress hormone. Over time, this rewires the developing brain to be more reactive, anxious, and defensive. This is what Siegel means when he says human connections shape neural connections. It's not poetic exaggeration. It's biological truth. Every relationship you have, from your parents to your friends, from your teachers to your romantic partners, is influencing the wiring of your brain. And even now, as an adult, every conversation, every argument, every moment of love or conflict continues to sculpt your neural pathways. This is the beauty and the burden of being human. We are always in development. Your experiences today are literally changing your brain for tomorrow. That's why understanding the developing mind is so crucial. Because if relationships shape your brain, it means that healing, growth, and transformation are always possible. You are not trapped by your past. You are not doomed by your childhood. You are a work in progress, and progress never stops. To understand this more deeply, let's look at the three building blocks of the human mind that Siegel describes: the flow of information and energy, the thoughts, sensations, and emotions moving through your awareness. The biological system that supports this flow, the brain and body that process, regulate, and respond to these signals. The relationships that influence this flow, the human connections that teach your brain how to interpret the world. These three systems interact constantly. Your thoughts influence your body. Your body influences your relationships. And your relationships shape your mind. For example, imagine you're stressed after a tough day. You call a friend who listens without judgment. Instantly, your breathing slows, your heartbeat steadies, your shoulders relax. That's not just emotional relief. It's a biological change. Your friend's empathy activated your parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body responsible for calm and recovery. That moment of connection literally rewired your brain's stress response. This is what makes human connection such a powerful medicine. It can soothe trauma, strengthen memory, and even change the structure of the brain. Dr. Siegel gives the example of Albert Einstein, whose brain was studied after his death. Scientists discovered that the bridge connecting the left and right hemispheres, the corpus callosum, was unusually thick. Why? Because Einstein spent years integrating logic with imagination, analysis with creativity. His habits strengthened that bridge, proving that repeated experience can reshape the brain's architecture. That's the principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change throughout life. It's the foundation of hope, because no matter who you are or what you've been through, you can train your mind to heal, grow, and evolve. When you learn to think differently, you wire your brain differently. When you build healthier relationships, you restructure your emotional world. When you practice calmness, mindfulness, or gratitude, you are literally sculpting new neural pathways of strength, balance, and resilience. Your mind is the artist, your brain is the canvas, and your relationships are the colors. Every moment of awareness is another brushstroke on the masterpiece called you. So as we journey through this audiobook, keep this idea close: you are not fixed. You are fluid, living, and capable of deep transformation. By the end of this summary, you'll understand not just how the mind works, but how to use that knowledge to create a more peaceful, connected, and powerful life. Let's move to the next part, where we'll uncover one of the most mysterious and misunderstood forces that shape who we are, memory, and how it weaves your past, your present, and your future into one continuous story. Memory. It's one of the most fascinating mysteries of the human mind, the invisible thread that connects who you were yesterday to who you are today. But what if memory isn't what you think it is? Most people imagine memory as a kind of filing cabinet, a place where the brain stores perfect snapshots of the past, ready to be pulled out and replayed whenever we want. But according to Dr. Daniel Siegel, memory is not a fixed recording. It's alive, flexible, and constantly rewritten by our emotions, our perceptions, and our relationships. Every time you recall a memory, you're not watching a video. You're rebuilding a moment, piece by piece, shaped by who you are right now. Let's break this down. Inside your brain, billions of neurons are constantly firing, sending electrical signals through complex webs of connections. When something happens, a hug, a heartbreak, a song that makes you feel alive, certain neurons fire together. The brain encodes that pattern as experience. Later, when one of those neurons is activated again, it triggers the rest of the pattern, and the memory resurfaces. This is why scientists often say, neurons that fire together, wire together. But here's where it gets interesting: those connections are not set in stone. Every time you remember something, you change it, you reshape it, you overlay new emotion, new meaning, new context. For example, imagine you went to a concert 5 years ago with someone you loved. At that time, the memory might have been pure joy, the music, the lights, the laughter. But if that person later hurt you, your brain rewires that same memory with new emotion: pain, regret, loss. The sound of that same song can now make you tear up instead of smile. That's how fluid memory really is. It evolves with you. Dr. Siegel explains that memories come in two main forms: explicit and implicit. Explicit memory is what we usually think of, conscious recall. You can describe it, visualize it, talk about it. Like remembering your first day of college, your favorite vacation, or the face of your best friend. Implicit memory, on the other hand, lives beneath awareness. It's not something you can put into words, but it drives how you feel, react, and behave. It's stored in the body, in sensations, in patterns of response. For instance, imagine a child who once had a frightening experience. Maybe a dog barked loudly near them. Even years later, that person might tense up or feel uneasy around dogs without understanding why. They're not recalling the event consciously. Their body remembers the fear. This is implicit memory at work. And here's what's profound: most of our emotional reactions in daily life come from implicit memory, not conscious thought. When someone ignores your message and you feel sudden rejection, that's not just about the text. It's a ripple from the past, echoing moments when love or attention were withdrawn. When a tone of voice instantly makes you defensive, you're not reacting to this moment. You're reacting to every similar moment your nervous system stored before. Your mind isn't trying to punish you, it's trying to protect you. It's reminding you of old emotional wounds so you can avoid getting hurt again. But often, those reactions don't protect, they limit. They build walls instead of bridges. That's why awareness is so important. When you understand how memory works, you can begin to separate what happened then from what's happening now. You can respond from consciousness instead of from conditioning. Memory is also deeply tied to emotion. Whenever an experience has a strong emotional charge, it gets stored more vividly in the brain. That's why you can remember heartbreaks and triumphs far more clearly than ordinary days. Emotion acts like glue. It binds the moment to your neurons, ensuring you don't forget. But there's a catch. Emotion can distort memory, too. Two people can live through the same event and walk away with entirely different recollections, simply because their emotional filters were different. Imagine you and a friend go to a party. You're nervous and tired, but your friend is excited and open. You both witness the same things, the music, the laughter, the people, but you walk away remembering how uncomfortable you felt, while your friend remembers how fun it was. The event didn't change. The lens through which you experienced it did. That's why Siegel says, memory is not about the past. It's about the present interpretation of the past. Even more fascinating is that when you retrieve a memory, your current emotional state reshapes it before it gets stored again. That means each time you revisit a painful memory with more compassion, peace, or understanding, you literally rewrite the memory's emotional code. You are reprogramming your brain's relationship with the past. Therapists often use this principle to help people heal trauma. By recalling painful experiences in safe, supportive environments, patients teach the brain that the danger has passed. Over time, the brain rewires those memories, reducing fear and restoring calm. This is not imagination, it's biology. When new neurons fire during a memory recall, they can form new associations, linking old pain to new peace, old fear to new safety. This process, called reconsolidation, is one of the most hopeful discoveries in modern neuroscience. It means healing is not about forgetting, it's about rewriting. Dr. Siegel gives a brilliant example. Imagine your brain as a vast library. Each memory is a book, but the pages are made of living ink. Every time you revisit a story, you can add new sentences, change old ones, even alter the ending. That's what awareness, therapy, and reflection do. They give you the pen. And this goes beyond psychology, the spiritual. Because every time you choose forgiveness over bitterness, empathy over anger, or understanding over judgment, you're not just changing your mood, you're changing your mind. You're proving that growth is possible even for the oldest wounds. That's why, as Siegel emphasizes, the mind is not a record keeper. It's a meaning maker. It doesn't care about perfect accuracy. It cares about coherence. It's constantly weaving your memories into a story that helps you make sense of who you are. And when you change the meaning, you change the story. So the question becomes, what story is your mind telling about your past? One of survival or one of limitation? One of fear or one of learning? Because ultimately, memory is not about holding on, it's about integrating. It's about taking what you've lived through and using it to create deeper self-awareness, empathy, and strength. That's the essence of the developing mind. Every experience, no matter how painful, can become a building block for resilience if you understand how to process it. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into one of the most primal and life-shaping forces in existence, attachment. You'll see how your earliest relationships with your caregivers created invisible blueprints that still influence how you love, trust, and connect with people today. Because understanding attachment isn't just about the past. It's about freeing your future. Every human being, no matter how strong or independent they appear, carries one invisible map inside their mind. An emotional blueprint that defines how they connect, trust, and love. This map is called attachment, and it's written during the earliest years of life. Long before you learned to speak, long before you could understand the meaning of words like love or trust, your brain was already learning what connection felt like. Every touch, every glance, Every tone of voice from your parents became a message, a signal that taught your nervous system whether the world was safe or dangerous, kind or unpredictable. If your caregivers were warm, responsive, and emotionally present, your brain built neural patterns of safety. You learned, I can reach out, and someone will be there for me. You grew curious, open, confident, ready to explore the world knowing there was always a safe base to return to. But if your caregivers were cold, inconsistent, distracted, or emotionally unavailable, your brain learned something else entirely. When I need comfort, no one comes. That lesson doesn't just fade with age. It becomes the foundation of how you handle relationships for the rest of your life. That's the power of attachment. It's not just emotional, it's biological. Dr. Daniel Siegel explains that attachment literally shapes the architecture of the brain. When a baby feels love, their body releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical that strengthens connection and calms the nervous system. The more consistently this happens, the stronger and healthier the child's emotional circuits become. But when love is absent or unpredictable, the brain wires itself for survival instead of connection. The stress hormone cortisol becomes dominant. The body learns vigilance instead of trust. The child grows up scanning for danger, preparing for rejection, and struggling to feel truly safe with anyone, even decades later. This is why so many people find themselves repeating the same painful relationship patterns over and over again. It's not because they consciously choose toxic partners. It's because their subconscious mind is following a script written in childhood. To understand this more deeply, let's revisit one of the most famous experiments in psychology, the Strange Situation Study by Mary Ainsworth. In this study, researchers observed how infants responded to brief separations from their mothers in a controlled environment. The results revealed 3 major patterns of attachment, and a 4th, disorganized one later discovered by other scientists. The first group was securely attached children. When their mother left the room, they cried or showed distress, but as soon as she returned, they quickly calmed down and returned to play. These children had learned that comfort was reliable, that love returned after absence. The second group was avoidant children. When their mother left, they seemed unfazed. They kept playing, avoided eye contact, and didn't show emotion when she returned. But inside, their stress levels spiked dramatically. Their calmness was an illusion. These children had learned that expressing emotion didn't help, so they shut it down. They protected themselves by appearing detached. The third group was ambivalent or resistant children. When their mother left, they were overwhelmed, crying, panicking, clinging. When she returned, they couldn't calm down. They wanted comfort but also felt angry and unsure if she would stay. These children had inconsistent caregiving, sometimes love, sometimes neglect, so their emotions became tangled between longing and fear. Later, researchers identified a 4th category, disorganized attachment, often found in children who experienced abuse, trauma, or fear from the very people meant to protect them. These children showed confused and contradictory behaviors, running toward and away from the caregiver, freezing, or collapsing in distress. Their brain associated love with danger. Now, here's where it gets even more profound. These attachment styles don't just vanish in adulthood. They grow up with us. They shape how we choose partners, how we communicate, how we handle conflict, and how we feel about closeness. If you have a secure attachment, you're comfortable with intimacy. You can trust others without losing yourself. You know how to give and receive love in a healthy, balanced way. If you have an avoidant attachment, you tend to pull away when things get too close. You value independence so much that emotional vulnerability feels like weakness. You might appear calm under pressure, but deep down you fear rejection, so you reject first. If you have an anxious attachment, you crave closeness but constantly fear abandonment. You overthink, seek reassurance, and find it hard to feel at ease in relationships. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And if you have a disorganized attachment, you live with a constant push-pull, craving love but fearing it at the same time. Intimacy feels both irresistible and dangerous. These patterns are powerful because they are not just habits, they are neural imprints. They live in the structure of your brain. But here's the miracle. they can be changed. Through new, consistent, emotionally safe relationships, whether with a therapist, a mentor, a partner, or even through deep self-work, the brain can form new attachment pathways. You can teach your mind what safety feels like. You can literally rewire your capacity for love. Siegel calls this earned security. It means that even if you didn't grow up in a secure home, you can still create that security within yourself. You can become the reliable caregiver your younger self never had. Think about that, the adult you can reparent the child you once were. Every time you calm yourself instead of reacting, every time you communicate instead of withdrawing, every time you choose empathy instead of anger, you're proving to your nervous system that connection can be safe. You are teaching your brain a new story. And this doesn't only affect romantic relationships. It changes how you handle friendships, leadership, parenting, every form of human connection. Children who grow up securely attached are more confident in exploring new environments, more resilient in handling failure, and more compassionate toward others. As adults, they build stronger marriages, raise healthier kids, and form more stable careers. But the opposite is also true. Insecure attachment often shows up as chronic anxiety, perfectionism, emotional detachment, people-pleasing, or fear of commitment. The roots go deep, but the healing goes deeper. Because when you understand that attachment is not a life sentence but a starting point, you gain freedom. You realize your reactions aren't your identity, they're your brain's outdated survival strategies. And once you see that, you can begin to rewire them. So how do you do that? How do you reprogram attachment? It begins with awareness. Start by observing how you respond to closeness and conflict. Notice what triggers fear or withdrawal. Then, replace automatic reactions with conscious responses. If you tend to shut down, practice staying present even when it's uncomfortable. If you tend to cling, practice breathing and self-soothing before reaching out. If you tend to fear intimacy, start with small acts of trust and vulnerability. Every time you respond differently, you're not just changing behavior, you're reshaping the neural architecture that defines your emotional world. Dr. Siegel reminds us that the purpose of attachment isn't dependence. It's integration, the ability to balance autonomy with connection. Secure attachment doesn't mean you never feel fear or insecurity. It means you can feel them without being controlled by them. It means you trust that even when relationships shake, you won't collapse. This is emotional maturity, the freedom to connect deeply without losing yourself. And this skill, once developed, becomes one of the most powerful forces in life, because every strong relationship, every healthy mind, and every peaceful heart is built on this foundation. Now that we understand the biological roots of attachment, let's take the next step deeper, into the realm of emotion itself. Because attachment gives you the map, but emotion gives you the movement. It's what drives your reactions, your moods, your energy, and your choices. And in the next chapter, you'll discover the truth that few people ever understand. Emotions are not weaknesses to suppress. They are signals to decode, forces that can either control you or guide you toward your highest self. When people talk about intelligence, they often focus on logic, knowledge, and reason, the capacity to think clearly. But Dr. Daniel Siegel reminds us that the real language of the mind is not logic. It's emotion. Emotions are not random waves of feeling that rise and fall without meaning. They are signals, messages from deep within, guiding you toward survival, growth, and connection. They tell you when something matters, when to move closer, when to step back, and when to protect yourself. The problem is, most people were never taught how to understand this language. We live in a world that tells us to control your emotions, hide your tears, don't be too sensitive. But when you suppress emotion, you don't eliminate it, you simply bury it, and buried emotions don't die. They wait. They wait for the right moment to resurface. In anxiety, anger, restlessness, or emotional numbness. Dr. Siegel explains that emotions are neither good nor bad. They are biological data. They emerge from the body's most ancient system, the limbic system, which evolved to help you survive. Long before you had language, your ancestors relied on emotions to navigate danger and opportunity. Fear kept them safe. Anger gave them power to defend. Joy signaled connection. Sadness marked loss and allowed healing. So when you feel something strongly, your brain is not malfunctioning, it's communicating. It's saying, something important is happening. Pay attention. To understand emotion at a deeper level, Siegel breaks it down into 3 stages. The first is orientation, when the brain detects that something significant is happening. This is the alert phase. Your heartbeat quickens, your focus sharpens, and your mind prepares for action. The second is appraisal and arousal. The brain evaluates the situation. Is this event safe or threatening? Is it something to approach or avoid? Based on your past experiences and emotional memories, your nervous system releases either calming or activating signals. The third stage is categorical emotion. This is where the feeling becomes clear. Joy, sadness, fear, anger, disgust. The brain selects the emotional label and sends it across your body through hormones, facial expressions, and tone of voice. This is why emotion is contagious. When someone laughs with genuine joy, your brain mirrors it. When someone cries, your chest tightens too. You're not just empathizing, your neurons are syncing. Human beings are emotional mirrors, wired to feel each other. This is how we survive, connect, and communicate long before words. Think about it. A child walks into a new environment, a school, a park, a crowd. They don't understand the situation yet. They immediately look at their parent's face. One glance tells them everything. If the parent looks calm, the child feels safe. If the parent looks anxious or tense, the child's nervous system mirrors that fear. That's the power of emotion. Travels faster than thought and speaks louder than words. Now here's where most people go wrong. They think emotions are enemies of rational thinking. But Siegel argues that emotions are the foundation of rationality. Without emotion, decisions lose meaning. The famous case of neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's patients, people who lost the ability to feel emotion due to brain damage, revealed something shocking. These individuals could think logically, analyze perfectly, but couldn't make simple decisions like what to eat for lunch or which shirt to wear. Why? Because emotions give value to options. They tell you what matters. Without emotion, you can't prioritize. So instead of suppressing emotions, the real skill is to regulate them, to allow them to flow without being drowned by them. Siegel says, to be emotionally intelligent is not to avoid feelings, but to use them as guides. Let's look at what happens when you don't regulate emotion. When sadness lingers, it turns into despair. When anger festers, it becomes bitterness. When fear dominates, it leads to paralysis. When joy is suppressed, it fades into numbness. But when you learn to name your feelings, observe them, and express them constructively, you reclaim control. This process, called emotional integration, is one of the key foundations of a healthy mind. Integration doesn't mean blending all emotions into calm neutrality. It means allowing each emotion its space, respecting its message, and then bringing it back into balance. Imagine your mind as an orchestra. Each emotion is an instrument. Fear keeps you alert. Joy keeps you alive. Sadness helps you release. Anger drives you to act. But if one instrument plays too loudly for too long, the music turns into chaos. Regulation is the art of conducting that orchestra. Children learn this balance not by instruction but by imitation. A baby cries, the parent responds with calmness and care. The child's body learns to settle. Over time, the nervous system encodes this lesson. When I'm overwhelmed, calm will come. But if a baby's cries are met with anger, silence, or neglect, the opposite lesson is learned. My emotions are too much. My feelings bring rejection. Those early patterns become emotional habits carried into adulthood. They determine how you handle stress, how you argue, how you love, how you grieve. Think about how this plays out in daily life. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Do you explode in rage, or take a breath and move on? You get criticized at work. Do you spiral into shame or take feedback as information? A loved one withdraws. Do you chase them in panic or stay grounded and give space? Your answers reveal your emotional regulation. And the good news, just like attachment, emotional regulation can be trained. Every moment you pause before reacting, every deep breath you take, Every time you choose curiosity over judgment, you're building new neural pathways. You're teaching your brain how to process emotion in healthier ways. This is why mindfulness, journaling, therapy, and compassion are so powerful. They don't erase emotions. They give you a way to hold them safely. In emotional regulation, there's one key principle: feel fully, but don't fuse completely. That means you let yourself experience the emotion. Anger, fear, grief, joy without becoming it. You witness it without letting it consume your identity. When you can do that, you gain emotional flexibility, the ability to adapt instead of collapse. And this flexibility is the mark of true strength. Because emotional health isn't the absence of storms. It's the ability to return to calm after the waves crash. In this sense, emotion isn't your weakness. It's your compass. It tells you when your boundaries are crossed, when your values are threatened, when your heart is open, when you're truly alive. But emotion also has a twin mood, the longer-lasting state that colors your perception of the world. If emotions are waves, moods are the tide. A single moment of sadness can pass, but when it lingers and shapes how you interpret everything, it becomes a mood. And that's where danger lies. When unprocessed emotions harden into permanent filters. That's how anxiety becomes your default. That's how hopelessness feels like home. That's how anger becomes your only form of power. The goal, then, is to prevent emotions from calcifying into moods. To feel deeply but recover quickly. To use emotion as a teacher, not a trap. Dr. Siegel's insight is revolutionary because it shows that emotional regulation is not just psychology, it's neurobiology. Every act of calm, every conscious breath, strengthens the circuits between the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, and the amygdala, the emotional center. This bridge, once fragile, becomes your internal peacekeeper. The more you use it, the stronger it grows. That's why calm people aren't lucky, they're trained. They've built their neural pathways through practice. And this leads us to one of the most powerful abilities a human being can ever master: self-regulation, the art of maintaining balance within chaos. Because emotion is the storm, but regulation is the sail. It's what allows you to move forward, no matter the wind. And in the next part, we'll explore exactly that: how self-regulation develops, why it's the foundation of emotional intelligence, and how it determines whether you crumble under pressure or rise with clarity. If emotion is the fire that fuels life, then self-regulation is the container that keeps that fire from burning everything down. It is the quiet, unseen skill that separates those who are consumed by chaos from those who can turn pain into power. Dr. Daniel Siegel calls self-regulation the master skill of emotional intelligence, the ability to manage your inner world so that your thoughts, feelings, and actions remain balanced, even when the outer world is unstable. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about directing energy. You've seen it before. Two people face the same crisis, yet one breaks down while the other bends and bounces back. What makes the difference? It's not luck. It's not genetics. It's self-regulation, the brain's ability to return to center. To understand this deeply, let's go back to the beginning: childhood. A baby is born with an undeveloped nervous system. They don't know how to calm themselves. When they're hungry, they cry. When they're afraid, they cry. When they're overstimulated, they cry. Their brain is in raw chaos. Waves of stress chemicals like cortisol flood their body. And the only way they learn safety is through connection. When a parent picks them up, holds them, and comforts them, the baby's breathing slows, their heartbeat steadies, their nervous system relaxes. This is called co-regulation. The parent's calmness becomes the child's calmness. Over time, these repeated moments teach the baby's brain that distress can be soothed. This is where the foundation of self-regulation begins, not in isolation, but in relationship. The child learns, when I'm upset, calm is possible. Later, they learn, when I'm upset, I can calm myself. That progression from external regulation to internal regulation defines emotional maturity. Now imagine a different scenario. A child cries, but no one comes. Or worse, the caregiver yells, mocks, or ignores them. The message the brain receives is different. When I'm upset, no one helps. When I'm scared, I'm alone. The stress response becomes wired for survival, not safety. That child grows up learning to either explode or shut down, fight or freeze, because they never learned the rhythm of returning to balance. These patterns show up later in life. The adult who slams doors in anger. The one who isolates for days when rejected. The one who numbs with distractions or addictions instead of facing pain. All are signs of dysregulation, the brain's inability to process emotion without being hijacked by it. But here's the truth. Regulation is not something you're either born with or without. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained, rewired, and strengthened. Let's understand what happens in the brain when you regulate yourself. Your amygdala, the emotional alarm system, detects threats and floods your body with energy. Your heart races, adrenaline spikes, attention narrows. This is the fight, flight, or freeze response, the body's ancient mechanism for survival. But once the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, steps in, it sends a message. We're safe. Calm down. It begins to lower the stress response, regulate hormones, and restore equilibrium. When you breathe deeply, reflect, or ground yourself instead of reacting impulsively, you strengthen the communication between these two regions. You're literally building a stronger bridge between emotion and reason. That bridge is self-regulation in action. It's what allows you to pause before you speak, to choose empathy over rage, to turn disappointment into focus. It's the invisible muscle of emotional control that successful, calm, grounded people use every single day. Siegel describes this beautifully. People who thrive in life are not those who avoid pain, but those who can process it without drowning in it. Let's take failure as an example. Imagine two people experience rejection. One spirals into despair, replaying the pain endlessly. Their brain locks into negative loops. The other feels the sting, processes it, and then reframes. What can I learn from this? They use the same pain as fuel for growth. The difference isn't strength, it's regulation. Self-regulation gives you the space between feeling and reaction, that crucial pause where awareness lives. Viktor Frankl once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose." That space is self-regulation. Without it, life becomes a series of reactions. With it, life becomes a series of responses. And that's what emotional mastery truly is, not being emotionless but being intentional. Children who grow up in environments that model regulation, where parents handle anger calmly, apologize when wrong, and show consistent love, internalize that balance. They grow into adults who can handle stress with grace. But for those who didn't have that environment, the good news is neuroplasticity gives you a second chance. You can teach your brain new rhythms of calm. Here's how. Awareness. The moment you name what you feel, I'm angry, I'm scared, I'm overwhelmed, you engage your prefrontal cortex. Naming the emotion tames the emotion. Breathing. Slow, intentional breathing signals the body that it's safe. It lowers cortisol and reactivates rational thought. Reframing. Ask yourself, what's this emotion trying to tell me? Every emotion carries information. Fear means protect. Anger means boundaries. Sadness means release. Connection. Talk to someone who makes you feel grounded. Just like in childhood, co-regulation through relationships restores emotional balance. Movement. Physical motion releases trapped energy from the body. Exercise, walking, or even stretching resets the nervous system. Each time you do this, you're reprogramming the circuits of your mind. You're teaching your body that it can feel intensity without losing control. That's why Siegel emphasizes, self-regulation is not the absence of stress, but the ability to recover from it. Think of self-regulation as an emotional thermostat. When life heats up, it cools you down. When life gets cold and isolating, it warms you with perspective. It keeps your internal climate steady no matter what's happening outside. And in leadership, relationships, and personal growth, this is everything. Because the person who can stay calm in chaos becomes the anchor for everyone else. When others panic, you stay grounded. When conflict rises, you listen. When things fall apart, you rebuild instead of react. That's quiet power, the kind that commands respect without ever raising its voice. This is the essence of mastery, the ability to bend without breaking, to act with clarity even under pressure. And it all begins with how you regulate your own mind. But regulation doesn't develop in isolation. It's deeply influenced by relationships, by how others respond to your emotions and how you respond to theirs. Because the brain is social. We don't regulate alone. We regulate together. That's why the next chapter takes us into the heart of connection, the invisible signals between people that shape not only how we feel, but who we become. We'll explore how every look, every tone, every gesture from those around us writes itself into our nervous system, and how relationships, even subtle ones, can heal or harm the mind in ways we rarely notice. There's a truth so simple, so powerful, that it often gets overlooked in modern science. We become who we connect with. Dr. Daniel Siegel calls this the essence of interpersonal neurobiology, the idea that your mind is not a separate, isolated system trapped in your skull. It's a living network, constantly shaped, refined, and redefined by your interactions with others. Every conversation, every gesture, every expression you exchange with another person sends signals that literally sculpt your brain. Your relationships, good or bad, loving or toxic, are not just emotional experiences. They are biological events. Think of your mind as a social mirror. When someone smiles at you, your mirror neurons, a special class of brain cells, activate, reflecting that smile inside your brain. You don't just see joy, you feel it. When someone frowns, those same neurons register discomfort or tension. This process is automatic and unconscious. That's how empathy is born, not as a moral choice but as a neural phenomenon. And it's why connection is not optional for humans. It's as necessary as food or oxygen. When we feel isolated or rejected, the same parts of the brain that process physical pain light up. That means heartbreak and loneliness are not metaphors. They are real, measurable forms of suffering. Dr. Siegel explains that this is rooted in evolution. From the moment man's first appeared, survival depended on connection. Our ancestors lived in tribes because safety required togetherness. To be excluded from the group was to face death. So the brain evolved to crave belonging the same way it craves air. When we are loved and accepted, our brain floods with oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, the chemistry of calm and joy. When we're ignored, criticized, or abandoned, the brain releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. The body enters a state of alert as if under attack. In other words, the brain treats disconnection as danger. This is why relationships have such profound power. They can heal or harm at the deepest level. Let's go back to the earliest form of this, the bond between a parent and child. When a parent holds their baby, speaks gently, and responds to cues, the child's brain records these signals as safety. Over time, these repeated patterns become neural templates for trust and security. But when the parent is distant, dismissive, or inconsistent, the child's brain records a different message, that love is uncertain, unpredictable, or unsafe. These patterns shape not only the child's emotions, but their sense of identity. And they don't stop in childhood. Every relationship we experience continues to reinforce or reshape these neural patterns. This is where modern neuroscience has given us breathtaking insights. Using MRI scans, scientists can actually observe which areas of the brain activate in response to connection or rejection. They can see how empathy, love, and compassion literally light up certain regions, while neglect or conflict shrink others over time. For example, long-term exposure to harsh criticism or emotional neglect can reduce activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-regulation and decision-making. But consistent love and positive reinforcement strengthen that same region, enhancing patience, empathy, and focus. That's how powerful relationships are. They can either fortify your mind or fragment it. Dr. Siegel points to one remarkable study, the Minnesota longitudinal study of parents and children, one of the longest and most influential attachment studies ever conducted. It followed children from birth all the way into adulthood, tracking how early attachment patterns influence their emotional, social, and even romantic lives decades later. The findings were astonishing but clear. Children who experienced secure attachment grew into adults who were more confident, cooperative, and emotionally balanced. They formed deeper friendships, handled conflicts with maturity, and built lasting relationships. Those with avoidant attachment, who were ignored or dismissed by parents, tended to struggle with emotional intimacy. Many became distant, cynical, or overly self-reliant, afraid to depend on others. Those with ambivalent or resistant attachment, raised with inconsistent love, often became anxious in relationships, seeking closeness but fearing loss. They lived in a state of emotional tension. And those with disorganized attachment, often raised in chaotic or abusive homes, carried deep internal conflict. They desired love but associated it with fear. Many developed trust issues, self-doubt, or even personality disorders later in life. These findings prove something profound. Relationships write themselves into the brain's circuitry. The emotional patterns you learned as a child echo into your adulthood until you consciously rewrite them. Teachers, mentors, friends, and partners all become part of this rewriting process. In fact, Siegel notes that teachers often unconsciously reinforce attachment styles in classrooms. Securely attached children are more likely to receive warmth, praise, and trust, while avoidant children, who appear detached, may be disciplined more harshly, perpetuating the very emotional wounds they already carry. This cycle continues across generations, unless awareness intervenes. And that awareness begins when you realize this truth. Every interaction you have with another person is an opportunity to heal or to harm, for both of you. Every look, every word, every silence is a form of communication that the brain reads. When you show kindness, you don't just make someone feel better, you literally change their neurochemistry. You calm their amygdala. You release oxytocin in both of you. You create safety. This is the essence of interpersonal connection, the silent language of signals between minds. It's the way two nervous systems sync in harmony, like instruments tuning to the same frequency. When you comfort someone in pain, your body unconsciously adjusts your tone, your facial expression, your breathing, all to help them feel safe. Their nervous system receives that signal and starts to regulate. You calm them, they calm you. This is biological empathy. And this doesn't just apply to parent-child relationships. Romantic partners, friends, and even coworkers influence one another's emotional states in the same way. This is why some people drain your energy and others uplift you. Why certain environments make you tense while others make you peaceful. You're constantly exchanging emotional signals, even without words. When relationships are healthy, they create a feedback loop of calm, a space where both people feel seen and safe. When relationships are unhealthy, they create a feedback loop of chaos. Each person's fear amplifies the others. Dr. Siegel reminds us that the goal is not perfection in relationships, but attunement, the ability to be aware of another's emotional state and respond in a way that brings connection instead of distance. Attunement is when you sense someone's sadness even if they don't say it. It's when you mirror their emotions with compassion instead of judgment. It's when you make another person feel felt. This feeling of being seen, understood, and accepted is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. It's what transforms loneliness into love, pain into peace, and trauma into trust. And the best part? Attunement can be learned. You can train your brain to listen not just to words, but to tones, pauses, and body language. You can practice empathy until it becomes instinct. You can learn to regulate yourself so you can help regulate others. Because the truth is, emotional connection is a two-way street. When you stay calm, you give others permission to calm down. When you stay open, you invite openness. That's why emotional leaders, whether parents, teachers, or partners, have such profound influence. Their stability becomes contagious. When a mind feels safe in another's presence, it grows. That's the miracle of connection. It doesn't just make life more pleasant. It literally transforms the architecture of the brain, creating resilience, balance, and trust. But connection doesn't only happen externally. The same principles apply internally, within your own mind. The relationship you have with yourself, how you talk to yourself, comfort yourself, and forgive yourself, is also a form of interpersonal neurobiology. Your internal dialogue sends the same biological signals your parents once did. Harsh self-talk activates stress circuits. Self-compassion activates calm ones. So, if love from others can rewire your mind, so can love from within. And that brings us to a profound realization. Healing begins not with isolation, but with integration. With reconnecting to others and to yourself. Because as Dr. Siegel beautifully writes, integration is the heart of health. In the next chapter, we'll bring all of these ideas together, the mind, the brain, the emotions, and the relationships, to uncover the final truth of the developing mind. How connection, awareness, and love can rewire not just the brain, but the very way you live. If the mind is the stage where thoughts, emotions, and memories perform their endless play, then integration is the harmony that allows the story to make sense. It's the process that turns chaos into coherence, confusion into clarity, and experience into wisdom. Dr. Daniel Siegel describes integration as the ultimate goal of mental health. It's when all the different parts of you, your emotions, logic, memories, and relationships, are linked together in balance instead of working against one another. To understand integration, imagine a symphony. Every instrument represents a different part of your mind, reason, emotion, memory, creativity, intuition. When these instruments play separately, it's noise. When they're connected under one conductor, it's music. That conductor is integration. And just like an orchestra, your brain functions best when its regions are both differentiated, unique in purpose, and linked, coordinated in action. Let's explore how that works. Your brain is divided into different parts, left and right hemispheres, the upper and lower regions, each performing unique functions. The left brain loves logic, order, and language. It wants structure, clarity, and control. The right brain, on the other hand, thrives on emotion, creativity, and intuition. It feels rather than analyzes. When these two sides work in harmony, you experience both reason and empathy, understanding life through balance. But when one side dominates, you lose integration. A person ruled by the left brain may become rigid, trapped in facts, unable to feel. A person ruled by the right brain may become chaotic, overwhelmed by emotions, unable to think clearly. Integration, then, is the bridge between the two. It's what allows you to be both analytical and compassionate, logical and emotionally intelligent, grounded and imaginative. This same principle applies to other areas of the brain, too. The upper brain, the cortex, is responsible for awareness, self-control, and decision-making, while the lower brain, the limbic and brainstem regions, handles instinct, emotion, and survival. When these two are disconnected, you experience emotional flooding, like anger that feels uncontrollable or anxiety that makes you panic. But when they're integrated, your emotions still arise, yet they no longer control you. You can feel deeply and still stay centered. This is the foundation of emotional maturity, to experience emotion fully without being enslaved by it. And the bridge that connects all these parts of the brain, left and right, upper and lower, is built through awareness. When you become mindful, when you observe your thoughts, name your feelings, and stay present instead of reacting, you activate the middle prefrontal regions that integrate the rest of the brain. That's why mindfulness, therapy, journaling, and reflective practices are not just spiritual tools, they are neurological exercises. Every act of awareness strengthens the wiring between regions that once acted separately. It's like tuning your internal orchestra. But Siegel takes this one step further. He shows that integration doesn't happen only within the brain, it also happens between brains. When two people connect authentically, through empathy, listening, or shared emotion, their brains literally synchronize. Studies using functional MRI scans have shown that during deep conversation or mutual understanding, the same regions of two different brains light up in rhythm. This is called interpersonal resonance. It's as if two minds are playing in harmony, attuning to each other's rhythm. That's why you can feel someone's energy, sense their mood, or be calmed simply by their presence. Integration doesn't stop at the skin, it extends into the space between people. This is where Siegel's concept of the mind as a relational process becomes profound. Your mind isn't confined inside your head. It exists in the flow of energy and information between you and others. That's why isolation hurts the brain. It disrupts integration. When you cut off connection, you cut off part of your own mind's ecosystem. But when you engage in healthy, loving relationships, your mind expands. You literally grow more integrated through connection. Let's think about how this works in real life. When you're in conflict, the primitive brain reacts fight, flight, or freeze. But if the person you're talking to remains calm, listens with compassion, and mirrors understanding, your brain's threat response begins to soften. Safety replaces fear. You move from chaos to connection. This is the healing power of integration between minds. Siegel explains that integration is the antidote to the two great extremes of mental suffering: rigidity and chaos. When you're rigid, you try to control everything: your emotions, others, outcomes. You become inflexible, perfectionistic, unable to adapt. When you're chaotic, you're unpredictable, reactive, and lost in emotion without direction. Both are signs of disintegration, when parts of the mind aren't working together. But when you integrate, you find the middle path, a flow state. You feel your emotions but aren't ruled by them. You think logically but stay compassionate. You maintain order without losing creativity. That's mental harmony. And the most beautiful part is that integration leads to something greater: resilience. Because when your mind is integrated, stress no longer fragments you. You bend, you don't break. You recover faster, learn deeper, and relate better. Dr. Siegel's research shows that people who practice mindfulness or develop secure relationships often display greater brain integration, thicker neural connections between regions responsible for emotion, memory, and awareness. This correlates with higher well-being, emotional intelligence, and even longevity. So, integration is not just mental health. It's whole health. But there's another dimension to this. Integration isn't just internal or interpersonal. It's also temporal, across time. Your past, present, and future selves must be connected for true coherence. If you're trapped in past trauma, you live disconnected from the present. If you're lost in anxiety about the future, you can't act with clarity now. Integration means connecting your timeline, making peace with the past, grounding in the present, and creating hope for the future. Siegel often encourages a reflective question. Can you hold the past with compassion, live the present with awareness, and imagine the future with purpose? If you can, you've achieved temporal integration, a unified sense of self through time. It's this integration between brain regions, between people, and across time that defines what it means to be truly alive and mentally healthy. Without it, life feels like fragments, random experiences disconnected from meaning. With it, life feels like a story, connected, purposeful, whole. So if you've ever wondered why mindfulness works, why empathy heals, why forgiveness feels freeing, this is the answer. Each of these acts restores integration. Forgiveness links past pain with present peace. Empathy links your mind with another's. Mindfulness links the emotional brain with the rational one. Love links your biology with your purpose. Integration is the invisible thread that turns experience into wisdom. It's why people who integrate, who reflect, connect, and stay aware, grow stronger with age instead of bitter. Their minds don't shrink. They expand. As Siegel beautifully puts it, the mind grows best in the soil of connection, and that growth doesn't stop at adulthood. The brain remains plastic, capable of change, for as long as we live. Every act of reflection, every moment of kindness, every pause before reaction is a new opportunity for integration. In the next part, we'll explore how this understanding leads to something even deeper: healing. Because integration not only explains how the mind develops, but also how it recovers. We'll see how awareness and relationships can literally rewire trauma, restore balance, and give birth to a more peaceful, powerful self. If the earlier chapters of The Developing Mind taught us how the brain is shaped, this one reveals something even more powerful: how the brain can be reshaped. Healing isn't just emotional, it's structural. Every act of awareness, love, and connection can literally rewire the neural circuits that were once built around pain. Dr. Daniel Siegel reminds us of one of the most hopeful discoveries in modern neuroscience. The brain is plastic. Neuroplasticity means that your brain isn't fixed in its wiring. It's constantly remodeling itself based on experience. That means trauma may mark you, but it doesn't define you. The scars of neglect, fear, or emotional chaos can be softened, rewired, and healed through new experiences of safety, empathy, and love. Let's start with how trauma actually embeds itself in the brain. When a person goes through intense emotional pain, especially in childhood, the body's alarm system, the amygdala, stays on high alert. The stress hormone cortisol floods the system. The brain learns to expect danger even when none is present. Over time, this constant state of hypervigilance rewires neural pathways for fear. The hippocampus, which helps distinguish between past and present threats, becomes less active, making old fears feel current. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation, becomes less effective under chronic stress. This is why people who've experienced trauma often say things like, "I know I'm safe, but I don't feel safe." Their rational mind knows the truth, but their emotional brain is trapped in the past. That's what trauma really is, the past replaying itself in the present. But here's the hope Siegel gives us. What was learned through pain can be unlearned through love. Healing begins with one simple but profound act: awareness. When you bring attention to what you feel instead of running from it, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the very region that trauma shuts down. This awareness begins to reconnect the emotional and rational parts of the brain, allowing integration to start again. This is why mindfulness, therapy, or even journaling can be transformative. Every time you name your emotion, you regain control over it. I'm anxious, I'm sad, I'm angry. These words might seem small, but they represent a massive neurological shift. Naming emotion activates the part of your brain that soothes emotion. Siegel calls this process, "Name it to tame it." Awareness brings light into the dark corners of your mind where fear once hid. But awareness alone isn't enough. The second pillar of healing is relationship, compassionate connection with others. Remember, the same way relationships can create wounds, they can also create healing. The nervous system that once learned fear through neglect can learn safety through empathy. The brain that associated touch with pain can learn to associate it with comfort. Dr. Siegel explains this through the concept of earned secure attachment. Even if you grew up in chaos, you can develop secure attachment later in life through consistent, loving relationships with a therapist, a partner, a mentor, or even a deep friendship. Every time someone listens without judgment, responds with kindness, or accepts you in your vulnerability, your brain is receiving new data. Connection can be safe. This new experience begins to overwrite the old template. Neurons that once wired for fear begin to link with neurons that represent calm and trust. Slowly, the brain's architecture changes. This is not a metaphor. It's biology. In one study, researchers found that patients who healed from trauma through therapy showed increased activity and thickness in the prefrontal cortex, the very region responsible for regulation and resilience. Their brains literally grew, stronger through emotional healing. And here's where it becomes deeply poetic. Love and awareness are not soft, sentimental ideas. They are rewiring tools. Every time you comfort yourself instead of criticizing yourself, you are teaching your brain compassion. Every time you stay calm in an argument instead of exploding, you are strengthening your regulation circuits. Every time you open up to someone trustworthy after years of guarding your heart, you are retraining your amygdala to relax. Healing, then, is not a single moment of breakthrough, it's a practice, a daily retraining of the mind to believe in safety again. Think of it like this: your brain is a forest. Trauma carved deep paths of fear through that forest. Healing is the slow, patient process of walking new paths, calm paths, loving paths, again and again until they become the new default. At first, it feels unnatural. The brain resists because it's used to danger. But with repetition, the new paths grow stronger, while the old ones fade. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't heal by doing one grand act of self-love. You heal by doing small acts of compassion 1,000 times. One more powerful aspect of healing lies in integration of memory. When traumatic memories are unprocessed, they live as fragments, flashes of emotion, body sensations, or fear that erupt without context. Integration means linking those fragments into a coherent story. When you can finally say, "Yes, that happened to me and I survived," your brain moves the memory from chaos to clarity. It no longer hijacks your nervous system because it's been named, seen, and placed in the past where it belongs. Siegel writes that integration is the moment when pain becomes part of your narrative, not your identity. And this doesn't only happen through therapy. It happens in moments of self-reflection, meditation, prayer, art, or even honest conversation. The act of sharing your story and being met with empathy is healing in itself. Your brain encodes that moment as safety. It replaces the old feeling of isolation with connection. That's why people say things like, "Talking about it helped me finally breathe." They're not being dramatic. They're describing neurological release. Healing also requires what Siegel calls presence. Presence means staying in the now, not running from the emotion, not intellectualizing it, but sitting with it in awareness. When you stay present with pain instead of fighting it, you're sending your brain a message: this feeling won't destroy me. The more you do that, the more the brain learns to tolerate emotion. This is emotional integration, transforming reactivity into resilience. In one of Siegel's most powerful metaphors, he compares the mind to a river. On one side lies the bank of rigidity, trying to control everything, refusing to feel. On the other side lies chaos, being overwhelmed by feeling. Integration is the middle flow, flexible, aware, open. Healing is learning to stay in that flow. So what's the destination of all this? It's not a life without pain. It's a mind that can hold pain and peace at the same time. A mind that can say, "Yes, I was hurt, but I'm not broken," because the developing mind never stops developing. Every act of understanding, every moment of love, every conscious breath rewires your story. And one day you look back and realize what once felt like survival has become strength. What once felt like a wound has become wisdom. That's the miracle of neuroplasticity. Your brain can be wounded by trauma, but it can also be sculpted by love. In the next part, we'll go deeper into what this process looks like in real life, how relationships, purpose, and self-understanding work together to sustain that healing and create emotional resilience that lasts for life. If healing is the process of rewiring the brain, then resilience is what keeps that wiring strong. It's the invisible armor that protects the mind without hardening the heart. It allows you to bend with life's storms, absorb its lessons, and rise stronger each time you fall. Dr. Daniel Siegel explains that emotional resilience is not the absence of pain. It's the ability to recover from it. It's the ability to feel deeply, adapt quickly, and restore balance after disruption. When life challenges you, through loss, rejection, or failure, your nervous system reacts. The amygdala sounds the alarm, cortisol floods your bloodstream, your heart races, and your thoughts spin. For many people, this becomes a downward spiral. Emotions take over, rational thought shuts down, and chaos reigns. But resilient people respond differently. Their brains recover faster. Their prefrontal cortex, the control center for decision-making and awareness, re-engages quickly, calming the emotional storm. Why? Because through experience, self-awareness, and relationships, they've strengthened the bridge between emotion and reason. They've practiced returning to center so often that it becomes their natural response. In other words, resilience is not a gift. It's a skill, and it's built through a powerful combination of three forces: awareness, connection, and meaning. Let's explore each one. Resilience begins the moment you realize that your emotions are signals, not commands. Most people live like leaves in the wind, carried wherever emotion takes them. But awareness, mindful presence, turns you into the tree. You feel the wind, but you stay rooted. When you feel anger, awareness helps you pause instead of react. When fear arises, it helps you observe instead of retreat. When sadness comes, it helps you process instead of collapse. Dr. Siegel explains that awareness activates the middle prefrontal regions of the brain, the part that regulates emotion, decision-making, and empathy. The more you practice mindfulness, the stronger these neural circuits become. This means every time you stay conscious in discomfort, you are literally building emotional muscle. You're training your brain to handle stress without breaking down. That's why meditation, reflection, or even simple breathing exercises have such powerful effects. They're not mystical, they're mechanical. They teach your nervous system how to stay balanced under pressure. Resilience doesn't mean ignoring pain. It means knowing that pain doesn't define you. Humans are not designed to self-regulate in isolation. From infancy, we regulate through connection. The presence of others helps calm our nervous system. When you talk to someone who listens without judgment, your heart rate slows, your breathing steadies, and your stress hormones decrease. This is called interpersonal regulation, and it's a biological truth, not an emotional luxury. Resilient people don't face life alone. They lean on trusted relationships. They seek guidance, comfort, and perspective when things fall apart. Connection provides something that logic cannot: coherence. When someone says, "I understand you," your brain receives that message as safety. It rewires the emotional memory associated with pain, teaching you that struggle and love can coexist. Dr. Siegel emphasizes that the most resilient individuals are those with secure attachment, those who've learned that even when things go wrong, love can return. But even if you didn't grow up with secure attachment, you can build it through earned security. Every healthy friendship, every safe conversation, every act of empathy rebuilds that internal sense of stability. This is why community matters so deeply. Isolation breeds fragility. Connection breeds resilience. So when you're struggling, don't isolate yourself. Reach out. Share your truth. Let someone's presence remind your nervous system that safety still exists. The third pillar of resilience is meaning, the ability to find purpose in what once caused you pain. When something terrible happens, your mind naturally asks, "Why me?" But resilience reframes that question into, "What now?" Instead of being crushed by events, you use them as material for growth. The brain loves coherence. It needs stories that make sense. When you can turn pain into a narrative of transformation, your brain rewires itself for strength instead of despair. That's why survivors often become teachers, leaders, or healers. They integrate their pain into purpose. They make meaning out of their suffering, and that meaning becomes their anchor. This process is more than emotional, it's neurological. Finding meaning activates the default mode network in the brain, the region involved in self-reflection, empathy, and identity. When you give pain a purpose, you literally reshape your sense of self. And this new self is not broken, it's expanded. Resilience doesn't make you immune to emotion. It makes you fluent in it. It's the art of feeling everything fully, then returning to peace. When you develop resilience, you start noticing a quiet shift inside you. You stop seeing failure as proof of inadequacy and start seeing it as feedback. You stop fearing rejection and start recognizing that not everyone's acceptance is needed for your worth. You stop being paralyzed by uncertainty because you trust your capacity to adapt. Resilience gives you emotional elasticity, the ability to stretch without snapping. Siegel compares resilience to a tree that bends with the wind but never breaks. The more flexible the tree, the stronger it stands after every storm. The same is true of the mind. Rigidity leads to fracture. Flexibility leads to growth. And this flexibility doesn't come from force. It comes from integration, the balance between strength and softness, independence and connection, reason and emotion. It's built through small moments. The times you breathe before reacting, the days you show up even when tired, the nights you comfort yourself instead of collapsing into self-criticism. Each of those moments is a micro-act of resilience. Each one adds a new layer to your inner foundation. And soon you begin to notice something miraculous. Life no longer controls you. Circumstances still challenge you, but they don't define your mood. You stop living in reaction and start living in response. This is emotional freedom, the highest form of resilience. Because the truly strong are not those who feel nothing. They're the ones who can feel everything and still stay grounded. That's what the developing mind ultimately strives for, not perfection but adaptability. A mind that flows, learns, and transforms instead of resisting change. In the next part, the final chapter of this audiobook will bring everything together. The science, the psychology, and the philosophy behind the developing mind. We'll explore how awareness, connection, and integration create not only mental health, but a deeply fulfilling, meaningful life. One where you no longer chase balance, because you've become it. After all the science, all the reflection, and all the stories, the developing mind leaves us with one powerful truth. Your mind is never finished. It's not a machine that wears down over time. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that grows through awareness, connection, and love. Dr. Daniel Siegel's message is as spiritual as it is scientific. Every thought you think, every emotion you process, and every relationship you nurture is shaping the architecture of your brain right now. The mind, the brain, and relationships are not three separate worlds. They are three rivers that merge into one current, the current of your life. And when these rivers flow together in balance, the result is integration. The state of inner peace, clarity, and connection that every human being longs for. Let's bring everything together. Your mind is not your thoughts. It's the space that holds them. It's the awareness that notices emotions rise and fall without getting lost in them. When you observe yourself, when you can say, "I'm feeling anger," instead of, "I am angry," you create distance between your identity and your emotion. That space is the beginning of mastery. Dr. Siegel calls this the hub of awareness. Imagine your mind as a wheel. The rim of the wheel is filled with sensations, thoughts, memories, and feelings, constantly changing, spinning. The center of the wheel, the hub, is your pure awareness, the part of you that observes without judgment. When you live stuck on the rim, you are at the mercy of every emotion, every external event. But when you rest in the hub, you can see everything clearly without being overwhelmed. That's mental freedom, the ability to feel without fusing, to think without over-identifying. Awareness doesn't make life easier. It makes it clearer. It turns unconscious reactions into conscious responses. Your brain is not a fixed organ. It's a lifelong construction project. Every new habit, every act of kindness, every moment of reflection adds new neural connections. Through the principle of neuroplasticity, the brain can change at any age. Old habits can be unlearned. New emotional patterns can be built. Each time you stay mindful in stress, you strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that integrates logic and emotion. Each time you forgive, you weaken the circuitry of bitterness. Each time you practice gratitude, you rewire your attention toward what's abundant rather than what's missing. In other words, you are not a prisoner of your past. You are the sculptor of your future. Neuroscience proves that inner peace isn't a mystical accident. It's a trained neural state. It's what happens when you repeatedly choose awareness over avoidance, compassion over criticism, calm over chaos. And what's beautiful is that the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. The brain learns to default to peace the same way it once defaulted to panic. If the mind is where awareness lives and the brain is where it's built, then relationships are where it's tested and expanded. Every relationship you have, from your parents to your partner, your colleagues to your children, is a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that are integrated and exposes the parts that aren't. That's why relationships often bring both joy and pain. They awaken the unhealed within us. But through them, we also find healing. When you approach relationships consciously, with presence, empathy, and humility, they become powerful tools for growth. You stop expecting others to complete you and start allowing them to reveal you. Dr. Siegel says it perfectly. Relationships are the crucible in which the self is formed. And the more aware, secure, and emotionally attuned you become, the more peace you bring into every relationship. You stop trying to control people. You stop chasing validation. You start connecting from wholeness, not from need. At the heart of the developing mind is the concept of integration, linking separate parts into a coherent whole. A healthy mind isn't one without pain. It's one where pain, joy, fear, love, and memory all coexist in harmony. Each part has its place. Integration is what transforms life from chaos or rigidity into flow. When your mind is disintegrated, you either become too rigid, over-controlled, perfectionistic, fearful of change, or too chaotic, impulsive, reactive, lost in emotion. But when you're integrated, you live in the middle path, flexible, aware, and open. You bend, but you don't break. You adapt without losing yourself. Integration is not just psychological, it's spiritual alignment. It's when the inner world and outer world move in sync. You stop living as a collection of fragments and start living as a coherent whole. Presence is the lived expression of integration. It means showing up fully for your life, aware, grounded, and open. When you're present, you're not haunted by yesterday or worried about tomorrow. You exist where life actually happens, in this moment. Presence allows you to see your thoughts and emotions as weather, not identity. A storm can pass without defining the sky. This is the practice at the heart of emotional freedom. Stay here. Feel fully. Respond consciously. Presence doesn't mean perfection. It means participation. It means you meet life as it is, with grace, patience, and curiosity. When you live with awareness, integration, and connection, your story changes. You stop defining yourself by what happened to you and start defining yourself by how you responded. You realize that memory is not just recollection, it's reconstruction. You can reinterpret the past to empower the present. The neglected child can become the compassionate healer. The anxious adult can become the mindful leader. The person who once felt unworthy can become the one who teaches self-acceptance. This is not delusion, it's evolution. Because the brain remembers pain, but the mind can reframe it. And once you change the story you tell yourself, you change the direction of your entire life. So what does a developed mind look like? It's not a mind that never suffers. It's a mind that knows how to suffer wisely. It's not a mind that avoids emotion. It's a mind that welcomes emotion, listens to its message, and lets it go. It's not a mind that fears uncertainty. It's a mind that flows with it, trusting that growth is happening even when the path isn't clear. The developed mind is both strong and soft, logical and loving, grounded and open. It has the discipline of structure and the freedom of flow. It doesn't cling to people, outcomes, or ideas. It lives in alignment with truth. It loves deeply but doesn't lose itself. It feels pain but doesn't live inside it. It sees chaos but moves through it with grace. This is emotional maturity. This is the outcome of integration. And the best part? Anyone can reach it. No matter where you start, your mind is capable of evolving toward balance, clarity, and peace. At the heart of the developing mind lies one unforgettable sentence. Human connections shape neural connections. It means that every time you love, listen, forgive, or show compassion, you're not just changing emotions, you're changing biology. You're reshaping the brain toward wholeness. And that truth applies to yourself too. The way you speak to yourself, your tone, your patience, your forgiveness shapes your own neural patterns. So, love yourself the way you needed to be loved. Be the secure base you never had. Speak to yourself with the same compassion you give to those you care for. Because your brain is always listening. Your mind is always developing. Even now, as you listen to these words, new neural connections are forming. Awareness itself is transformation. No matter what your past holds, the future remains unwritten. The brain that once learned fear can learn peace. The heart that once closed can open again. You have the power to rewrite your inner world, to transform survival into strength, loneliness into connection, chaos into clarity. Dr. Siegel's message is both scientific and soulful. The mind is not just what you have. It's what you create, moment by moment. So, as you move forward, remember, every breath you take with awareness is healing you. Every act of kindness is shaping your brain. Every honest connection is expanding your mind. You are not broken, you are becoming. You are not behind, you are evolving. And no matter where you are in your journey, your mind is still developing. Nurture it. Trust it. Grow with it. Because when you develop your mind, you don't just change your brain, you change your life. Thank you for listening to this full audiobook summary of The Developing Mind by Dr. Daniel Siegel. If this journey gave you a new way to see yourself, don't let it end here. Keep nurturing your awareness, your relationships, and your compassion. They are the tools that build the future you deserve. Subscribe to Audiobook 101 for more life-changing books on mindset, psychology, and personal growth. And keep evolving one idea at a time. Because as Dr. Siegel reminds us, The mind grows best in the soil of connection. Stay aware, stay connected, and never stop developing your mind.